There are some people who say they've seen a ghost or two in their time. Others will tell you that they've never experienced anything strange at all and that ghosts simply don't exist. But every now and then, you hear from someone whose entire life seems tangled up in the paranormal. Figures standing at the edge of the bed, watching. Coincidences that begin to feel less like chance and more like a curse. And a man whose earliest memory is of dying. These are all the experiences of one listener who claims the paranormal has followed him for more than 40 years. And after hearing everything that he's been through, you may start to understand why he says one thing: never trust a skeptic. I'm just gonna get straight into it here because David's stories, first of all, he's experienced a lot, but some of them are just, I have thought about them every day since first reading them. Greetings from across the pond. David here, from South Freezing Dakota. When I look back on all the ways the paranormal has touched my life, ghosts are like gravity. I don't need a lab experiment to know that they are real, any less than I know what would happen if I dropped my laptop. This life experience has taught me to never trust a skeptic, and while I will never have my own podcast, that would be the title. Truthfully, I've been binging your podcast, and I love it. First of all, thank you very much. But second, Never Trust a Skeptic is an excellent paranormal podcast title. I guess I should start with the fact that my earliest memory is dying. I was just about a year old. I remember the angel of death, and I remember being sent back. That started 44 years of being ultra sensitive to ghosts. It's kind of cool to explain. I used to know what buildings had strong hauntings, which had minor hauntings, and which to stay out of. I called it my spidey sense, and I was never wrong. There were buildings in Sioux Falls I would not enter. I have heard that people who have near-death experiences, some do believe that they kind of sit closer to the veil, and then start to see things that they couldn't before. 2 years ago, I had stage 3 cancer, and had major surgery. I'm currently both cancer-free and spidey sense-free. I don't know, but something about the anaesthesia took it away. I lost more than my kidney. Small price to pay to still be alive. Yep, I am very glad that you're still alive and the surgery was a success. And congrats on 2 years cancer-free too. They do say that anaesthesia, you kind of just switch off the human on the operating table. Does that switch off something else too, that then never wakes back up with you in the recovery room? I would love to be able to tell all of these encounters chronologically, but that's impossible. I will have to go topically. I won't lie, sometime around 8, I messed with the Ouija board at a friend's house, and he and I didn't say goodbye. God knows what we released and has been following me around. If reading the comments on my Ouija board video has taught me anything, it's that very weird things can happen with them. I'm sure someone somewhere has experienced sleep paralysis. I wouldn't know. In all of my nighttime encounters, I have been wide awake and could and did move. Everything that I am going to relate is true, to the best of my ability, or reported to me by those I trust. Sorry for the typos and language. Never apologise for typos or language. That's how I know that these experiences are in your own words, and I love that. Although I will censor language just so I don't get in trouble with Big Daddy YouTube. It's just a window to an office over a strip mall, northernmost in a series of like 6 gables. Most people drive by it every day, even stop at a traffic light in front of it on Fairfield Green in Connecticut. It's on the east side, opposite a bank, and kind of perpendicular to an old movie theatre. I can't speak to the stories of the movie theatre, I only know that it is haunted. More on the bank later too. The building that houses the window sits on a spot where I was told something really bad happened here before colonisation. It's a rather boring strip mall, crappy restaurant that is not haunted on the south end, and as I recall, as I left Connecticut 14 years ago, then a series of stores. The northernmost store must have changed names and owners a dozen times in my first 18 years. That one raised the spidey sense to 11,000. All through my childhood, we seemed to get stuck at that light, and most people aren't like I was. I couldn't look at that window or that store. I was scared with a primal terror beyond reason. 3, 4, 5, 6, 18 years old. Just nope. In college, I still couldn't look at it. Just passing it set off the spidey sense and raised my heart rate. One day, I asked a co-worker who claimed to be clairvoyant if he could guess which building terrified me. He knew. I didn't have to tell him. When someone can corroborate like that without absolutely any context clues, that's strange. One day, driving my elder by 13 years sister on that road, I asked her if she knew that building. She gestured towards the northernmost store. That's where we went to buy your crib before you were born. My heart in my throat. I couldn't speak as the light changed. One day, offhandedly, I asked my mother if she remembered my first crib. You mean the one that you were afraid of? The one you never slept in? You cried, and we had to take you out to sleep. What the actual frick, Mom? Frick is not the word he used, but I'm sure you can gather what he actually said. And also, my sentiments exactly. What do you mean I wouldn't sleep in the crib that you got from the creepy store that I can't even look at now? The crib was out of my haunted house before I was 5, but obviously, the trauma remains. From the day I came home from the hospital as a newborn, my life was touched by the paranormal. Growing up, my father had 2 restaurants. In the first one, off the kitchen was a back room of refrigerators and freezers and stairs up to the attic that we used for storage. I spent many hours making pizza boxes up there, or, as a teen, carrying stock up or down. Sometimes, the attic was a quiet sanctuary to work in silence. I knew something was watching me. Oh man, if only I knew then. Bobby was a dear friend of my 2 elder, 10 and 12 years older brothers, and he worked for my dad when I was little. But college-age Bobby mixed booze with the steering wheel, and it was the only time we ever saw my father cry. The next morning, my brother was rolling pizzas, and he heard, clear as day, Bobby calling his name. Okay, skeptics can reason that one out. I can't. I know what he heard. Do not drink and drive. There is not a good enough reason in the world for anyone to ever get behind the wheel of a car after drinking. It's just not worth it. Don't do it. Bad financial decisions caused my dad to step away from the restaurant for years and years, subleasing it. But past retirement age, my dad tried to reopen and business sucked. To drum up customers, I found a high school friend who gave paranormal talks to come in and we'd have a spooky night. We actually did fill the restaurant. Absolutely love that. I would have been right there. Paranormal pizza party. Yes, please. A different work friend, a witch, not sensitive, brought a woman with her to hear the talk and have some pizza and beer. The woman was a stranger to me and my family. She explained that she was psychic, and I was polite, but inside I was laughing at her, until she dropped the bomb. Who's Bobby? Well, he's a friend of the family who died many years ago. He's upstairs, and he's okay. My head began to spin. He loves your family, and just hangs out. All those years, it was Bobby in the attic, the phantom of the pizzeria. Now that is an opera I would watch. One week, out of college, I did some temporary work as a file clerk in the unfinished basement of the bank on Fairfield Green, the one that sat opposite the strip mall where the crib came from in the first story. I hadn't realised how many times the bank had changed hands and names in the previous couple decades until the boss told me. Anyways, as I did whatever I did in that cold, stone, unaltered 19th century basement that summer week, I could see the shadows move. Like a crowd in my peripheral vision. They didn't bother me, and I ignored them. You're there with a job to do, as long as they just carry on flitting about in the peripherals and nothing worse. I think you could learn to live with them. Here I am saying that while sitting in my comfy 20th century above ground living room. It turns out that they brought a temp in, me, because no one else wanted to deal with the ghosts of Shawmut, the bank, and everyone avoided that basement. A quarter century later, I believe it was residual energy, maybe natives marching to battle. They call it stone tape theory. I believe it's a fact. The stones remember and replays happen. That was Connecticut. In South Dakota, everything more than 70 years old appears to be made from granite. And there is even a city-sponsored haunted tour at Halloween because of all the reported hauntings. I mean, it is interesting that you do find a lot of residual hauntings in buildings made of granite. Nonna means grandma in Italian. My Nonna lived 97 years of awesome. She refused to learn how to drive because she liked being chauffeured. Born in 1899, she owned and ran her own business. Before she even had the right to vote, Frickin' Connecticut. In South Dakota, she could have been voting from 1888. She does sound absolutely amazing though. I love her already. Norna ultimately raised 7 children and had 24 grandchildren, but I was her favourite. She and Norno had insisted that my father raise his children and love his 2 wives, not at the same time, in her house. That does feel like an important distinction to make. Eventually, he added several rooms until the structure was a figure 8 with an artificial courtyard. Norna was a widow for 17 years, and perhaps most importantly, prayer cards, rosary beads, and endless EWTN aside, which in case you don't know, Global Catholic Television Network, Norna was afraid of the dark. She was never in complete darkness, always had a small light on, something Dad inherited. I have theories, but as she never spoke to me about it, let's move on. She died. A few years later, that horrible house was purified by fire. An accidental fire started by a friend of my brother. No one was hurt, miraculously. The insurance company built a new house, and there was a comforting air about this new house. We joked it was Norna looking after us. One day, my father's cat disappeared. And after a day or two, he was down. I don't discuss cats and dogs, so I brought up Norna. My dad's face lit up. "Ma, find the cat!" The next day, the cat was on the front step, waiting to be let back in. I've just got this image in my head of the ghost of a 97-year-old Norna giving very stern words to this cat, who's looking just as nonchalant as it would be if it was being approached by the living. "Your father's worried about you, you need to get yourself home, stop him worrying sick." Yeah, but more importantly, are you going to feed me? That's usually the question they ask. It's the question they ask everybody. Being the curious bachelor 20-something idiot I was. Sorry, did I say idiot? I mean frickin' moron. After a late shift at the call centre I was working at, because at this time Dad was between restaurants, I was curious about the top floor of the parking garage. I'd never been up there, but a number of co-workers said it had an eerie feel. So rather than drive down and out, I drove up. I mean, you just gotta go and have a little look, see what you can see, right? Surely that's harmless enough. I mean, we're talking about it in one of these episodes, so I'm going to guess the answer to my question. The top floor was empty. I got out of my car and called my clairvoyant co-worker and walked a few feet. The night seemed to get darker, and the spot was colder, and my spidey sense went to 1,000. Something was there, and it wasn't happy with me. Get the hell out of there as fast as you can. Yeah, those are the type of instincts that you listen to when you feel them. I jumped in my car and sped home, like the devil himself was following me. I got home to the new house, locked the back door and armed the alarm. Yes, I still lived with Mum and Dad. In the middle of the night, that alarm went off. We inspected and no one had broken in, but it appeared that someone had pushed in on the back door, enough to trip the alarm, but not enough to open the door. Like someone was pushing back from the inside, keeping it out. Thank you, Norna. I never went to the top of that parking garage again. I cannot say that I blame you there, to be honest. There are beings, things and places that humans should not disturb, especially humans who are sensitive. Years later, a little wiser, I married. My then wife and adoptive daughter moved in. My eldest is a great kid and also has the spidey sense. A little voice would ask, in her 5-year-old way, about the nice old lady that would come to see her. We finally pulled out a picture of Norna. That was the old lady. I love that beyond the grave, my Norna and my child had some kind of healthy relationship. I bet that she would have been so thrilled as well though, seeing the next generation of the family living in the house. This story concerns the bedroom at the top of the stairs, back of the house, in the old house before it burned down. Before my father added the new rooms to the house, there was one staircase from Norna's dining room to the upstairs, and only 2 bedrooms up there. The house was already an abomination of mismatched additions and unfinished parts. Ultimately, my father made it a nightmare like the Winchester house. I was literally just thinking to myself, Winchester house. So, Dad moved back in with his first wife and elder 3 children. The boys were in one room upstairs, my sister downstairs, and my dad took the bedroom in question. That was 1968. 2 years later, in 1970, his first wife died of cancer. It was her bedroom, but that alone tells me nothing. By 1971, my parents had married, and Mum moved into the same room. Well, from day one, my parents wanted more children, but my mum was just not conceiving. The additional rooms were added to the house, and my parents moved downstairs. The open-air stairs were added, and my elder sister got the room. Well, as it turned out, everyone learned in 1977, my mum had ovarian cysts. Whatever the doctor did worked, and I came along in 1978. My my little sister in 1980. My mom did ultimately need a life-saving hysterectomy. The room had been her bedroom too for a time before they'd moved out of it and my sister moved in. Still, that tells us nothing. Yet. When my elder sister was in the room, she was in there for more than 15 years. Remember, 13-year age difference. Ultimately, she moved out, which is a different tale. My sister was diagnosed with cancer. Stage 4 cervical. She should have died. Just like I should have died. But emergency life-saving surgery took her uterus and cervix, and she's doing very well decades later. And it had been her bedroom for 15 years. Starting to see a pattern here. My favourite aunt also lived in the room at the top of the stairs, back of the house, the room. She was living in it when she nearly died of polio. Definitely seeing a pattern. That house was wrong. That room was wrong. After my sister moved out, it became my room. I figured out that to create the new stairs, a closet had been destroyed. The door was still there, a simple wooden door, gabled with a ceiling. But what was left of the closet was the depth of the wall and the door stuck on the carpet, so I never saw behind that door. I lived in that gabled room, cramped where you could only stand up straight in the middle, from junior high to college. The house burned down. I ultimately got cancer. That's way too much to be a coincidence for me. That room killed my father's first wife, delayed my conception, nearly killed my mum, my sister, my aunt, and me. It's kinda hard to ignore when so many people have lived in that room and had horrific things happen to them. You'd have to be so curious about what's behind that door though, if there was anything at all. My marriage was doomed from the start. Over time, we lived in Connecticut, upstairs in my dad's house, and shared 5 apartments in South Dakota. And in all of those bedrooms, I experienced sleeping with the lights off for the first time, something that my dad doesn't get. In all of those bedrooms, many nights, we were not alone. I don't suffer from sleep paralysis. I can always move when I wake up in the middle of the night, and I frequently do wake up to pee or because I'm disturbed. I discovered very quickly a woman watched us sleep. A ghostly watcher. I could see her, and I could feel her, and she always activated my spidey sense. This wasn't clothes in the closet pareidolia or laundry matrixing, for this vision appeared in many different places in each room over the years. She'd just watched though. Never a threat. Don't love anyone standing there watching me sleep, but I suppose at least she's just watching. No suffocating, growling in your ear kind of action like you sometimes hear about. Once, I went to the hospital with a concussion, and as 2 nurses gave me an EKG, ER medicine, the watcher was in the room with us. I became used to it. For more than a decade, the watcher just watched. When my marriage ended though, the watcher was gone. I slept with the lights on for 4 years, and now I sleep in the dark. The watcher has not returned since my divorce, so what does it all mean? I know that was more of a rhetorical question, but could it have been something to do with your ex-wife's side? Different family member? Just very odd that she disappeared after your divorce, after following you around to so many different bedrooms over the years. So, remember how I said my childhood home was purified by fire? Many guests were uncomfortable in that family house, especially the stairs. You were never alone in my house. Something was always watching you. And not always just watching. So, Mum had taken little sister somewhere, my older sister was upstairs, my brothers were out, and Norna was sleeping. Dad got a phone call and was in the kitchen. Back then, the phones had wires, and my dad and the phone were like teenage girls. Business or politics, when he got going, he was animated and locked in. The rest of the world melted away for him. Oh, the days where you could fiddle with the telephone wire while you're on the phone to your mate. So, one very bored 3-year-old couldn't get his attention. I decided I'd go upstairs and see my sister. So I went alone to the room at the heart of the house and climbed the open-air stairs. Same stairs as the Brady Bunch. I mean, those stairs are kinda terrifying anyway. 1 step, 2 step, 3, and bam. Something shoved me off the stairs to the side, and I went crashing down, catching my chin on a broken novelty statue my dad had left there and needing 8 stitches. Dad was in the kitchen occupied. My sister was upstairs. Norna was in bed. No one else in the house. So what pushed me? I didn't fall. I was pushed. In 1986, my dad bought a second restaurant. Bad mistake. And that's ignoring the fact that it broke him financially. I'm talking about the building. Personally, I experienced the basement. Don't go in the basement. It's not that it was a creepy stone basement. There was just something wrong down there. Basements. I always quite fancied a house with a cellar, barring the fact that most in the UK are affected by groundwater, so would probably be more of a water feature than a usable room. But also, I think reading people's ghost stories and how a lot seem to happen underground, I do think I will give it a miss, ultimately. You would be watched from the shadows, and no one would go alone down there. But that was just the tip of the iceberg. You can't see the kitchen from the back door, where the alarm was. Once, a cook and waitress were about to lock up, and he said, maybe I should just make another pass and make sure all the lights are off. At that moment, in the kitchen, a refrigerator door slammed. They pressed arm and rushed out the back door. The alarm motion sensor didn't go off that night. So what did slam the refrigerator door? My older sister decided to move into the upstairs area where there was a bathroom, maybe a rundown office area and some storage space, and she turned it into an apartment. I think she just wanted out of Dad's house. Anyway, from day one, she began to report odd occurrences. A chair being moved to the middle of the floor while she was out several times, and then some poor choices of dates would become terrified by something they couldn't see and leave quickly, never to return. Possibly the ghost doing her a favour there then. She met the man she'd marry, and while the chairs still turned up in the wrong places, nothing scared him away, not even her cooking. Her now fiancé decided to turn the space into a proper apartment, and finished the attic into a master bedroom, created a kitchen, replaced the floor in the main room, and installed a wall to turn it into 2 rooms. In the floor, he found some cards and toys that had to be decades old. Into the trash they went, and no sooner had the dumpster been picked up then all paranormal activity in the apartment and restaurant ended. So who did those cards and toys belong to? Why were they in the floor? Who put them there? And who was attached to them, playing Take Me Out with your sister's boyfriends? No likey, no feeling safe in the apartment ever again. Financially strapped and with 3 children, one under one, my former wife and I moved into the apartment we shared the longest together. It was not the best. The day we moved in, I was washing my hands in the bathroom, and in the mirror was a farmer, standing in the corner. I looked to the corner, there was nothing. I looked back to the mirror, and he was gone from there too. Just giving you no time to settle in, just getting right on with the hauntings on day one. Over the toilet was a stain that looked like a 3-fingered hand. Of course, the watcher also appeared dozens of times too. 2 of my daughters asked us who the woman who watched them sleep was. They asked separately, and independently described the same watcher I had seen. One of my daughters to this day won't sleep in the dark, so Norna, Dad, me, and my daughter all had and have issues with the dark. That sounds pretty generational. Dad declined to comment on whether or not he had had a watcher though. Once, in that apartment, I was watching TV before my 12:30 shift. Kids were at school except the baby, and my former wife was working. I saw movement out of the corner of my eye, and there was a little girl, maybe 5 or 6, peeking around the corner at me. She slipped and backed down the hall. I got up and checked, and the only child in the apartment was the baby, sleeping. He wasn't even old enough to walk yet. My sister-in-law showed up to babysit, and she confirmed no child. But something had peeked around that corner. Things got weird in that apartment. Oh, as if a mysterious creepy child peeking at you from around the corner isn't weird enough. The things you lot put up with, I would be so out. One day, for a second, I saw a woman checking on my crying baby. Not like the watcher though. She was an aging woman with a bullet hole in her head. I blinked and she was gone. Count them. So far, that's 3 apparitions and the watcher. An active property and a 90s build. But of course, it had been farmland for a century or 2 before that. And that's not all. There was an especially dark period. I'd been struggling in my marriage and my religious beliefs, as well as with migraines, panic attacks, and work issues. It came to a head one night when I did not see the watcher. I was wide awake and I could move. I closed my eyes and felt something cross the room towards me. Then a hand grabbed my arm. A hand with only 3 fingers. Oh no, like the stain of the 3-fingered hand in the bathroom. Oh no. I didn't know what to do. I just fell back on prayer. I rebuked it. The hand released and the presence receded. I wonder what I would have seen if I'd had the courage to open my eyes. Courage? No. In that situation, I think you are more than justified keeping your eyes closed. Some things you just don't need to know. For the record, my former wife and children have 5 fingers on each hand. Whatever grabbed me was not of this world. I tried to explain that one for more than a decade. I got nothing. Of course, I believe in Bigfoot and many other cryptids. but my experience is limited. I remember being 6 or 7, watching TV sitting on the living room floor. I looked up and left to a small high window my mum had never covered, and there was a face watching me. For perspective, I went behind the house in college, and due to the landscaping and construction, it was above my head. But back then, I remember as a kid, a face had stared in the window at me. So basically, for a face to appear in that window, it would have had to have been unnaturally tall. Okay, got it, great, already off to a creepy start. It was a green, lizard-like face. Not that I'd ever seen one before, but it looked like a Silurian from Doctor Who. I looked at him, he looked at me, and then I looked at the TV. I looked back, and he was gone. I could almost hear that thought process. You look up, oh, there's a face there. I'm gonna go back to watching TV now. Hang on, wait, there shouldn't be a face there. And so you look back and there's nothing there. Don't love that. I never told my mother, and I don't know what she saw, but 2 days later, she had a curtain over that window, which didn't come down until the house burnt down. Ooh, does that mean that she saw the face too? My cousin agreed to let me share 2 brief tales too, anonymously. First was the afternoon he saw his sensei's aura. A born skeptic, yes I know. My cousin didn't believe it until he was on the way out with another student who said, I don't want to sound crazy, but did you see his aura? What do you think about auras? I've had someone tell me that I have a very colourful aura, apart from when we got to one part of the conversation where it all went blue. I don't know what that means. The other story was that one day, my cousin was walking on the side of the street with no sidewalk. Off the shoulder it was just mud. Suddenly, there was a voice telling him to walk in the mud. Well, he thought that was silly, so he didn't. Well, the voice became louder. Walk in the mud. My cousin just assumed it was silly. Suddenly, an unseen force shoved him into the mud. Immediately after, a truck sped around the corner and over the spot where he'd been walking. That shove saved my cousin's life. He's not such a skeptic anymore. That's gonna be enough to make you convinced, at the very least, that you've got yourself a guardian angel. My maternal grandfather suffered from undiagnosed mental illness. He was a man during the Depression who lived with depression. When I was a teenager, all of his grandchildren and many of his grandchildren were grown, and Grandma was sinking into dementia. Grandpa was lost. He left a note telling his beloved to take her afternoon pills. Then he went out to the garage alone and ended it. I will never forget the way my aunt wept at the funeral. I had no religion then. I don't really have religion now, but I ended college Catholic. Truthfully, I hadn't thought about Grandpa in like 5 years, but I began to pray for the souls in purgatory, because I believe all intelligent hauntings can't move on without help, with or without religion. One night, Grandpa came to me. 5 years after I watched him be buried, I was the first and only person to see him happy. He was smiling and glowing. He said, "Tell your mother I love her very much." And he faded away. That told me that he was at peace and could move on. I really hope that he was at peace. Just a horrendous thing to go through. For your grandpa, obviously, but for your whole family too. North of New York City by a couple of hours is a historic site. It shows restored Huguenot homes from 1650 to 1920, including a recreation of the 1700 chapel. You tour one house at a time with a guide and walk the block on the tour. It was fascinating. In one home, 1800s-ish style, they had the 3 family portraits in the cramped living room. Well, there may have been 6 of us watching the guide tell the tale of the paintings. Mother, father, grown daughter, but the daughter looked wrong. On the back of her painting, the artist had scrawled, "I did my best," and the date. The portrait had been painted 3 days after she had died. Quite young and unmarried. Very sad. I'm sorry, I just can't with the "I did my best." Oh, I bet he felt so guilty. The guide explained that the painting had disconcerted so many guests, they tried hanging it upstairs away from the parents. This lasted a week, but every night they found it on the floor on the opposite side of the room. The string was undamaged. So they hung the painting back downstairs and it never fell again. Yeah, you can't separate the daughter from her parents like that. While I was there listening to the stories, behind me was nothing but a wall. No one was behind me. Yet I heard a voice, clear as day in my ear, "Get the frick out." Again, exchange frick for No living person had spoken. Someone, however, wanted it clear to me that I wasn't welcome in their home. Couldn't wait to move on to the next house. Oh, you really are under no illusions of how that voice is feeling when that sort of language is directed at you. Of course, I asked. It turns out each house and the church and the well had a ghost story. In fact, every year for Halloween, the local college's drama department performed them for the Halloween tour, and the guide absolutely believed my experience. I returned for Halloween, but was not yelled at again. Whoever that was though, they just went straight for 100, didn't they? There's nowhere to escalate from swearing at someone. You gotta start small, you gotta move an ornament, maybe even tap on a shoulder, not going straight for the expletives. How to Haunt a House by Don't Scare Claire. There is a story I must fight to remember. This one is weird and unexplainable, but I don't think it's too scary. Sometimes a story doesn't need to be outwardly horror movie though, for it to just stick in your brain and be unsettling. You see, it's about a memory, or lack thereof. It was inspiration for the Edward Sanderson short story, The House on River Street. Driving on Riverside Avenue, Westport, Connecticut, towards the train station, it's common to be stuck in traffic and wait for the light to change. I personally don't know how many hours of life was stopped at that light in that traffic, but if I had it back, it would cover all the hours of podcast you have created and then some. At one point, you pass under the interstate overpass. Stores on the right, back then older buildings, stores on the left, similar but not so old, then a fence, and then a parking lot. All of this is along the river, hence the name of the street, Riverside Avenue. Just before the overpass on the right was the mystery, that when I can remember, it haunts me. There was an empty store/restaurant building. In fact, I don't know of it ever being occupied while I lived in Connecticut, but I couldn't remember anyway. You see, that's the problem. I'd notice it while stopped in traffic and say, wait, there's a building there. My spidey sense was mildly perked. Then the light would change and I'd simply forget. Weeks later, or what have you, I'd be back at that light and notice it. Wait, there's a building there. Hang on. Didn't I know that? Oh, when you're doubting yourself, you know that you've been in that situation before, and then your spidey sense is going as well. Something's just off. After years of this, my spidey sense allowed me to retain it sometimes. But here's the twist. I asked my dad what used to be in that building. What building? It's an empty lot. I asked Mom. What building? Isn't that just grass? Similar from my siblings and from my boss at the time who could see it out the window. If they looked, none of them remembered the building. I took to asking others. No one remembered that building. Finally, after a few years, I met my ex-wife and showed it to her. A week later, I brought it up. What building? You didn't show me a building. Complete memory hole for everyone. It's like you see it, but you don't want to remember that you saw it. Almost like the resident spirits want to be left alone and make you forget, so you will, which explains why businesses fail. That is so weird though, for so many people to just have this complete lapse of memory around that specific spot. Yeah, that is going to make marketing your business in that building rather difficult. Oh, so-and-so business is in that lot. Must be an old advert, there's nothing there now. Even writing this, knowing my spidey sense is gone, I know that I will forget the building again before you read this. If it's not paranormal, I wish someone could explain it to me. I will close on a sad note. Have you ever met that one person who makes your black and white world colourful? You know, the one that makes you glow when you see her? Well, mine's a him and he's currently upstairs doing his grown-up job while I talk about ghosts, but yes. Well, 4 years divorced and months after cancer surgery, months after losing my spidey sense, I met the one. You see, I knew that I'd lost my spidey sense because of how I reacted to buildings that used to terrify me. They just no longer did. I've been in them. But I mean, that must be disconcerting in itself. You spend so much of your life having that extra sense, and now it's just not there anymore. And you know that somewhere that used to deeply affect you is just like a normal room again. But with N, as I'll call her, I was a different person. I was happy for the first time in my life. The memory of the short time we dated keeps me warm on long, dark nights. One night we drove to her hometown, and somehow my spidey sense was back for one night only. Just with her. Just one night, I knew which houses were haunted and which weren't. This doesn't surprise me. She made me feel alive. Now my spidey sense is as gone as she is. It was the best summer I ever had. I'm no longer sensitive, but something tells me that the paranormal is not done with me. To have that many things happen to you and to feel that definite cut-off in this ability, you truly never know. Maybe at some point you will get it back. Well, that's it. Sorry the anecdotes are so short. I've told these stories enough times that they've become concise. I hope this listener's submission of true stories I've related to the best of my ability is interesting, I hope this works for the podcast. Keep up the good work. I love your podcast, and I hope it's clear why I can't trust a skeptic. Yep, I'm gonna say that I completely understand when you've spent that amount of your life having these experiences that not only happen to you, but also the rest of your family too. You're gonna be kind of chuckling to yourself when people come up to you saying that ghosts don't exist and whatnot. But just, wow. Thank you so much, David, for taking the time to share your stories. I will be thinking about that connection with the crib and that building that didn't want to be remembered, and then the weirdly tall cryptid just staring at you for a while yet. Not mentioning the creepy kid looking around the corner. I could do without that image in my life. But let me know, would you have ever been curious enough to venture back up to the top floor of that car park? Or was one terrifying encounter that potentially followed you home enough? And you found out all that you needed from that, thank you very much. I definitely know what my answer would be. Nana helped me once. I'm not tempting fate and pushing my luck a second time. But just like David, if you have a story that you'd like to share of something that you just can't explain, I would love to hear about it and possibly feature it on the channel. Please do email me at hello@don'tscareclaire.com or use the Google form that's in the description and in the pinned comment. Every single one gets read through, and I'm making it my mission to share as many of these stories as possible. But before I go, I just have one more cheeky little favour to ask of you this week. I've been nominated for 2 awards, again at the Ghost Planet Network Awards this year. It still utterly floors me every time, even being nominated for 1. This year I've been nominated for top podcast and top researcher. Me, the girl who just likes reading a lot of books. I'm up alongside some brilliant people in the paranormal. So whatever happens, I'm just grateful to be nominated. But if you want to throw a couple of votes my way, it would absolutely mean the world to me. The Google form for voting is in the pinned comment. Voting closes on the 31st of March and we find out in June. But as for right now, if you enjoyed this collection of stories as very kindly told to me by the real person who experienced them, then please do give the video a like. And if you enjoy hearing stories like this, make sure you subscribe. I chat about the history behind the mystery as well as first-hand witness accounts every week. But anyway, that is all from me today. Go and get a drink of water. Keep yourself hydrated, please. I cannot wait to chat with you more about the morbid, mysterious and macabre. So until next time, sleep safe. I had so many funny comments on another Listener Stories episode because I had been on my lap for just a few minutes and it looked like I was being inappropriate. I've just realised that Bean has been on my lap through a very big portion of that video, so there is a cat on my lap if it looks weird in the video. What a thing to have to say.